I'm sure that I need not tell you that fuel prices today are as erratic as Metro Manila's non-contact apprehension program. It's just really, really erratic. I never thought that in my lifetime I would see fuel go past 80 pesos per liter, and yet here we are today. And if you've been shopping for new cars lately, you'll note that, well, the prices of those cars are slowly starting to creep up. So today, we have a party of two. Both 7-seaters, both fuel efficient. But unlike when they were first introduced, like Metro Manila's non-contact apprehension policy, their prices have also been erratic and have gone up by just a bit. Okay, scratch that. By a lot. Now, between this 2022 Suzuki Ertiga GL and this 2022 Mitsubishi Xpander GLS is a price difference of 177,000 Philippine pesos. One has gone the way of a more utilitarian role, focusing on value and the essentials, while the other is focused more on a more refined driving experience, but at a cost. Now, unlike our comparos in the past, we're not exactly going to crown a champion per se. What we're going to do is look at what each car brings to the table and see which particular one is right for you. Do you need help purchasing your car insurance? Head on over to AutoDeal.com.ph/car-insurance. Here, you can compare prices and customize your insurance coverage from many of the Philippines' top providers. When you've selected the insurance that's best for you, simply fill out the application and complete the transaction with ease through Visa, MasterCard, GCash, GrabPay, or PayPal, and receive your policy within the next business day. Get the best deal on insurance with AutoDeal. I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but they say that you can tell a lot about a person by the shoes that they wear. I guess that makes me a very timid person. But in the case of the 7-seaters that we have here today, it seems to ring true. I mean, take a look at the wheels of the Ertiga. 15 inches of really classic, softer, traditional-looking wheels that matches the entire motif, or rather design, of the car. It's softer, it's a lot easier to get used to, it's a lot more approachable in the sense that you don't feel like it's got so many cuts, and it works, truthfully. It's traditional. Traditional too are like the lights up front, which are still halogen here and halogen there as well. 180 millimeters of ground clearance, discs up front, drum at the rear. No chrome to speak of on the side of the car, well, maybe except for that logo there. But truthfully, it's a really welcoming sight because, like I said, it's more traditional, it's softer. It's like a pair of school shoes that will last you the entire year. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, these shoes look like, well, they're like running shoes designed by science, and they're much, much edgier, they're sharper, they're larger too, they're 17s, which again, goes with the overall design of the automobile. It's much sharper up front, there are a lot of cuts down the side, there's chrome all over the place. I mean, look at the front grille, the dynamic shield design, and then you've got LED DRLs and headlamps as well. Yes, halogen fog lamps, so similar to the other guy, but still a lot edgier. You've got disc brakes up front, drum at the rear, 225 millimeters of ground clearance. So if the Suzuki is more of a minimalist, the Xpander is more of a maximist? Is that a term? Design-wise, the choice is, well, always going to be yours, but because design, the looks are always subjective, so it's entirely up to you. See, the Ertiga is designed more for a broader audience, a lot more people, because, Well, it looks that way. It's softer, it's more traditional. It's what you would expect to see on the road, and that's not a bad thing. In the terms of the Xpander, however, it's sharper, edgier, newer. It's not exactly niche. No, not at all. But the Xpander is basically something that you either truly love or you don't love it at all. There is no in-between with this guy. If you wanted an in-between, it'd be this. When you open them up, truth be told, the choice actually becomes easy because the motors are identical. Here, you've got a 1.5 liter four-cylinder gasoline engine. 1.5 liter four-cylinder gasoline engine. This is mated to a four-speed automatic. Guess what? Four-speed automatic as well. 103 horses, also 103 horses. The difference would be in torque. The Suzuki has got 138 newton meters of torque, whereas the Xpander has got 141 newton meters of torque. Very, very small difference. I think my Vespa has more torque than that difference, to be honest with you. Fuel efficiency, well, also identical. Inside the city, they were both able to do about 10 kilometers per liter. Now on the highway, okay, the Xpander was able to do it about 22.5 kilometers per liter. The Ertiga, 23.6, so a difference of 1.1 kilometers per liter. I would say, however, that, well, that's almost exactly the same because, well, I was driving on the same patch of road to do these tests, but at different times. And it was real world conditions, so the traffic obviously will change. And that 1.1 kilometer per liter is really barely anything. Cargo space is obviously always going to be a major issue when it comes to seven-seater cars because, well, they're family automobiles. In the case of the Xpander, you've got enough space behind the third row to carry a stroller or perhaps a collapsed wheelchair or perhaps even overnight luggage or but carry-on luggage is what I'm trying to get at. You can load heavy items on top of this, even though that this cover is kind of softer like the wing of a plane. There's a lot of give because there are compartments found underneath. Now there's hard plastic walls that stand and you're allowed to put a lot of weight on it, and these also act as compartments so that when you have toys and whatnot in the back, they don't sort of like slosh around. And then you've got compartments on either side of that box too. In the Ertiga, it's actually similar in the sense that, yes, you have the same amount of space as the Xpander, same things that you can load back here, but these covers for the cubbyhole are actually much thicker, much more durable. They must be because there are no compartments found underneath to stand on, so to speak. But that compartment there is much larger as a whole. So in here, you could probably load, let's say for example, a swimming pool, an inflatable, a deflated inflatable swimming pool, and the pump too. So that's how big that space is. Now, when it comes to maximizing the amount of cargo space inside the seven-seater, when you put the third row down, it's actually quite identical. The only difference is how you fold the third row. Here, it's a latch that you pull up and the seats fold ever so easily. And here in the Xpander, it's a tab that you pull up, and it just collapses right down. Now, I found that you can fit the same number of balikbayan boxes inside both these automobiles. Granted, here, there's probably just a bit more space, a bit more girth. In the Ertiga, it's ever so slightly tighter. Not by much, truthfully, but I must report that nonetheless. But they do, like I said, carry the same number of boxes. Let's now find out exactly how the third row feels like for, let's say, for example, kids or under tall adults. Third row space is actually quite similar with both automobiles. There's a decent amount of leg room. When I say decent, it's because there's enough space when the persons up front in the second row give you enough space. Definitely good for two medium to small passengers. Jack actually placed two larger people back here. They fit, but they weren't all that happy. The space is similar, and the amenities are somewhat similar as well. There are bowl holders on either side that are very adequate. In the Ertiga, there are no charging points. In the Xpander, there is. What differs, however, is the ingress and egress of the automobile. See here in the Ertiga, The seats fold forward and then slide forward. Sorry, they don't fold, they bend forward and they slide forward like so, right? Which is actually pretty easy enough to get to the automobile, or rather to get to the third row. It's the Xpander that does it, well, a little bit better. See here, it easily tumbles over, which gives you so much more room to be able to access the third row. And that really was truly much easier. Oh, I gotta show you the 12-volt socket, the only difference. That and, well, there's a little bit more space that you can put, I don't know, like a pencil or a ball pen at most, but the bottle holders are still of the same size. The difference now when we get to the second row is what I'll show you is the space is almost the same, it's the material of the seats that's different. Second row comfort is actually pretty similar in terms of space. Leg room is pretty decent so long as I'm driving and not Jack. That's similar to both automobiles. And then, like I said, what was different is the seat material. They're both comfortable, they're both supportive, but here inside the Xpander, it's more of a, I don't know, it's like a velvety suede kind of a feeling. It's obviously cloth, but it's just very different. It feels very premium. It's pretty cool. Strange, but cool. Toys back here include charging points found here up front. There's a Type A and a Type C. You've got these quaint little, I don't know, paper holders or knick-knack holders at the back of the driver. Then you've got door cards that are really huge because they can hold bottles like, look at this. This is a normal size bottle and just look at how it fits. I mean, this thing is like, it's like giving Jaws a chiclet. It's ridiculous. It just fits so easily. And then there's other materials and other touches on the doors and whatnot that make it really different. Inside the Ertiga, Jack, get out of the way, man. Here in the Ertiga, the material is a bit more familiar. It's definitely cloth, yes. It's not slidey cloth at all. No, it feels like it's textured, especially on this side. It feels durable, and it's definitely not as premium as the Xpander. But the space, like I mentioned, is roughly the same. This is Jack's driving position, so it would be a lot more forward if I were driving this car. The differences in toys would be, well, one, it has a 12-volt charging point, or 12-volt socket, rather than the two USB points that you can find inside the Xpander. And then the door cards. The door cards, there are bottle holders which are quite sufficient, I might add, because, yeah, that's a normal bottle and it fits quite easily inside that bottle holder. But it's just that it can only hold one bottle as opposed to the Ertiga, which can hold 3 bottles per door. And then the material also on the door, very different in the sense that here there's more scratchy black plastics. Actually, it's all scratchy black plastic, which just basically means you can take one trapo, wipe the entire door, and you're done. Other stuff too that is similar to the Xpander is that you've got air vents found up on top. There's 4 of them with an air controller knob here, no temperature. This too has a center armrest like the Xpander, but in the Ertiga, there are no cup holders here. There are cup holders in the Xpander. So, one last thing. Also, there are very important ISOFIX tethers inside the Ertiga, and there are also ISOFIX tethers inside the Xpander, which you would obviously expect since they are, well, family automobiles. So, what I was trying to get to before I interrupted myself was that so far we've shown you the similarities between these automobiles. We're talking about the engine, we're talking about the general size of the car, the seats for the second row, the third row, cargo capacity. So I guess the normal progression of this is, where exactly is the 177,000 Philippine pesos more going if I'm going to get the Xpander? Well, let me show you. So in the Ertiga, you do get a touchscreen infotainment system that has Apple and Android capabilities. You get digital chip computer in the center, flanked by 2 analog gauges. You get a flat bottom steering wheel that's plain. It's still desuce. You have your 12-volt socket, your USB point. You have a manual parking brake. A lot of scratchy black plastics all over the dash, much like the doors. And then you do also get power locks for all the doors, which you press a button to lock before you get going. all right? But in the Xpander, you get all of that, but with a little bit more. The touchscreen not only has Android and Apple capabilities here, but it also has a reverse camera. The trip computer in the center is, well, it's colored, adding a little bit more color to your life. The steering wheel may not be flat bottom, but there are buttons on it to control your audio system, and it's also got cruise control. It's not desusse because it's the push start, if you can call it that. The air controls are, well, they're not automatic, but they are digital, and you've got an electronic parking brake. The dashboard too is not all scratchy black plastics, but it's got some soft touches and different textures there as well. And on the door, it does have power locks too, but this one, smartly enough, locks all the doors when you're finally on the go. And it also has one thing that we definitely take for granted: a center armrest. Okay, no dog food in this one. Good job, Jack. Ertiga feels a little bit stiffer, really, the ride. Like, it feels like it'll work better or feel better when there's a full capacity of people inside. The Xpander, on the other hand, yeah, that's a more pliant ride, thanks to the adjustment that Mitsubishi has made to its dampers. Credit to the Ertiga, though. I mean, as a utility vehicle, it definitely does maximize its carrying capacity, whether it's cargo or people. There is one quirk that is similar in both vehicles, which is the steering feel. In traffic, it feels like it's a little lacking, a little dead really, like there's no rebound or return. I find that a bit odd. And then when you're traveling on the highway, that's when it's also different in the sense that, well, there is a bit more steering inputs that you need to do to keep the vehicle straight. It's not like, and I've said this before, like a Hollywood black and white movie from the 50s where you're literally driving in a straight line like this. No, nothing like that. It's just that it's more inputs than you're actually used to, which I guess if you think about it is a little better because then you're always alert. Consuelo de bobo. The Xpander's throttle response feels like it's a bit more eager to get you going. It really feels like the gearbox is tuned just a little bit better. In the Ertiga, on the other hand, it feels, well, a tad slower. Like there's a wee bit of resistance holding it back. To credit the Ertiga, though, it might be also why it has just a hair better fuel efficiency. Just a hair. We're not exactly on the highway just yet. We're heading there now. But I actually feel better that I'm driving in this Xpander and Joey's in the Ertiga by the time we get to the highway because, well, I've got cruise control. Now, it's not the greatest and the grandest of things. And to be honest with you, paying 177,000 Philippine pesos more for cruise control sounds like a bit much. But see, you're not. You're actually paying for a lot more than just the cruise control. So if we were to limit it though to just cruise control at 177,000 Philippine pesos, I'm not sure if I'd go for that. Would you, Jack? I don't know. Probably not. Probably not, yeah. That's a bit expensive for cruise control. Now, all the differences that we mentioned earlier adding up to 177,000 Philippine pesos, well, you will definitely feel it also, whether you're in traffic or on the highway. In traffic, it makes for a calmer, comfortable experience. On the highway, it's a heck of a lot easier too because I've got the option of putting it in cruise and just resting my right foot. So it does count for something. It should count for something. It's 177,000 bucks, man. The business end of both automobiles do differ quite a lot, but since the power plant and the transmission are similar, the driving dynamics are much like the cargo capacity and the interior. Not identical to a T, just some slight differences. If this were a conventional Comparo where we had to crown a champion, then yes, most definitely the Xpander would take it. I mean, it deserves the win over the Ertiga. That's hands down. And the 177,000 Philippine pesos that you're spending over the Ertiga to get the Xpander is well worth it. With better lights, you've got bigger wheels, better tech inside, a better sound system too. The list just goes on and on. So most definitely, yes, it would be crowned our champion. But this isn't your average Comparo. We mentioned at the very beginning that we're trying to figure out which particular car best suits you. Now, this was brought about because, well, we realized that there are people out there that when they buy an automobile, it doesn't necessarily have to have all the bells and whistles all the time. Sometimes a mid-tier variant is enough. And when you're talking about a car that costs 2 million Philippine pesos and the difference is 500,000 Philippine pesos, well, that's a lot of money. It's the same thing when you're talking about a car that costs just 1 million Philippine pesos. 177,000 Philippine pesos is still a lot of money. Hell, it's a lot of money to me. With all due respect to our winner, I have to admit that the Ertiga still has a lot of great points going for it. The biggest one would be that it fulfills all the needs that a potential buyer is looking for in an MPV. And to be honest with you, you can't go wrong with either of these cars. You cannot. I will leave you with this final thought. I've said it many a times before, but it's important I repeat it again. When you buy an automobile, make sure that the price of that car works for you and you don't work yourself to the ground to pay for the car. That's important.